from the armament perspective, it's always like India is Russia's biggest defense market, always has been. In the same time, New Delhi is hedging its bets and dealing like a boss with Russia and US too at the same time. Now, US sanctions Turkey for buying Russian weapons, the same S-400 system. So, Professor Singh, now there are talks of waivers of sanctions from Americans to to India. We had this deal in early late 16, 17s, way prior to the CATSA came into force. And is US taking it with a grain of salt, being the same military alliance here? Could you shed some light on this?
Thank you, Vipul. We are talking here of India procuring S-400 missile systems from Russia, which are expected as repeatedly we are told before end of this month, the first set of missiles are likely to be received and inducted in India. That's an official position now. We also know that CATSA, as you mentioned, Countering American Adversaries through Sanctions Act of United States, has been invoked both in case of China when it procured S-400 missiles, and then of course NATO ally Turkey. Again, sanction was slapped. So what could be the possibilities of sanctions being slapped on India? Clearly, India has been calibrating both the process and the semantics. 2018, when the contract was signed, it was called contract. That time also Putin was visiting New Delhi, and the joint statement made no mention of this procurement. So India has also been playing subtle along with Russia, not to provoke United States unnecessarily beyond a point. Now, what is interesting to see in current situation when the missiles finally land on Indian shores and are inducted is an equation that you have to notice between the three leaders, Vladimir Putin, Narendra Modi, and Joe Biden. You understand Joe Biden has been under enormous stress domestically. His popularity ratings have been falling, particularly after this precipitous withdrawal from Afghanistan, no ending of the spread of pandemic, employment problems for people in America, economy not showing any resilience. So apparently he is not in a most powerful position to act very, very, assertively vis-a-vis an emerging very close ally and a major defense partner called India. Putin, likewise, you can notice historically, we have been talking of the relative decline of Russia and earlier Soviet Union, is currently also under enormous stress domestically and international situation. Right from 2016 elections in the United States, US Congress has passed several legislations directed simply to punish Russia. And of course, all kinds of other permutations that the United States has continued to make, particularly during President Trump administration time, which also makes Putin looking for partners in that sense. Now let's look at India. India's track record has lately been relatively one of rising curve. I'm not saying India is equal to United States. United States GDP is 10 times stronger than that of India. It's the strongest military on the planet. But nevertheless, the trajectories, if you notice, are distinctively in favor of India. Now, in that backdrop, notice that in September, Indian Prime Minister had a face-to-face in-person meeting in White House with Joe Biden. As Ambassador just mentioned, in those closed-door meetings, you can discuss things in a completely frank manner and in a great confidence. Howsoever secure online conversations could be, I don't think people can be fully assured of security. So therefore, closed-door meetings between great leaders are significant in that sense. So Indian Prime Minister has had a closed-door meeting with Joe Biden and now another closed-door meeting with President Putin. So apparently there is some kind of arrangement being thought of as to how this issue will be tackled in terms of India receiving S-400 missiles and whether sanctions are going to be imposed on India. The optimistic assessments are that sanctions may not be imposed on India because we'll find some way of explaining our semantics of grandfather clause. As you just mentioned, the negotiations began earlier than the legislation began to be discussed in US Congress. But let me also put my neck out and say, in case sanctions are imposed, maybe there will be just ceremonial sanctions, very minuscule, to just, kind of show the world that the legislation that was passed in US Congress was, stood by, they appreciated and followed that legislation. And worst case, this won't be the first time sanctions are imposed on India. India has received sanctions from the United States all the way from 1974, first atomic test that India did. So this is not going to derail any relationship either of India and Russia or a relationship of India and the United States. Both are enormously significant for us. As Ambassador just mentioned, Russia has been the most reliable partner when it comes to defense cooperation. The United States has not been a reliable partner in times of crisis, as history tells us. But we have signed a large number of foundational and other agreements with the United States now, which puts in India-US relationship, even in the limited defense sector, in a very, very novel and very potent kind of a context. Whereas the relationship with Russia over a period of time, if you follow studies done by SIPRI, which is Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, that does all these trends and trajectories of defense cooperation and arms transfers, it has shown that in 20 years past, from 2/3 to less than 50% is the contribution that Russia makes in India's defense procurements. Whereas the curve of United States supplying India has gone up relatively. So both have their own advantages and disadvantages for India, and therefore India would continue to engage both these nations. And both these nations also find important, relationship with India as a, destination for transfer of their defense equipment. But last point, let me quickly make, is the overall relationship you have to notice. Simply $8.1 billion trade with Russia compared to almost $100 billion trade with the United States makes an enormous difference for us. And I think that is something that will have to be noticed. And very last point on this, their relationship is today facing certain formidable challenge, because Russia is a time-tested friend. United States is an emerging new, very close friend of India. But both Russia and India see themselves today engaging each other's arch enemies. Russia is engaging China enormously with something like $45 billion of trade and huge amount of other technology transfers, defense cooperation, energy transfer. And India likewise has increasingly become closer to United States, which is an arch enemy for Russia in that sense. So it's a situation of what we call as a complex interdependent situation, where they understand their limitations and strengths, and therefore I think they will be calibrating to minimize the damage and maximize their benefits in building partnerships, particularly sectoral partnership, where India is emerging as a major investor in Russia now, not just the procurement of defense equipment. So therefore, they will be looking at what are the cost-benefit analysis on both sides. And I assume that sanctions either will be delayed, not imposed, or will be very, very ceremonial in worst case situation. And India would then gradually go ahead and receive rest of the missiles, S-400 missiles over a period of time.
Yeah, so basically the systems have already come in October, and we are just waiting in for the missiles. And talking about the curve that Professor Saab you mentioned right now, is that understanding India or taking India as a growing arms market is always been there as a case. And now talking about the bigger markets, and then like you said, China. So right now, Russia and China are mere partners for, you can say, for convenience, united by their hatred for United States, and it can go only as far as that in terms of longevity of the relationship is concerned. So China stays just a tool to counter US as a larger picture maybe. Russia will never forget the 1969 Battle of Zhengbao, and now all the more with its hegemony attitude, the dragon is nudging the bear out of its hibernation, especially when China wants to expand the BRI in Central Asia, which has always been Russia's backyard. And Putin definitely sees this as Chinese interference and is not so very happy about this, and Russia has its own issue. So also China backing the the Taliban government, where Putin has been hard on radicalism and subsequent terrorism. Russia also pledges its commitment for maritime safety and security with ASEAN centrality and platforms, ergo your South China water issue. Hence, the optical Russia-China partnership doesn't seem to be of a concern to India as yet, and this visit also actually cements that thought. Also, the 2+2 agenda and the outcomes clearly show that Russia chooses India over China as a strategic partner. So, Professor Singh, can you throw some more light on Sino-Indo-Russian dynamics at this juncture?
Thank you. I think you mentioned me to say something about Sino-Russo-Indian dynamics. First thing that immediately comes to mind is that there is a Russia, India, China strategic triangle. Go back to 1990s, Primakov had visualized these three countries starting a trilateral dialogue, and over a period of time, this has kind of sustained itself. So that is a dialogue which sees them sitting together, just three countries, China, Russia, and India. And on several issues around the world, they have found a certain sort of overlap, or even sometimes a complete consensus on both their vision as to how to address some of these regional global challenges, and also some of their strategies. So that is the positive side, and this has seen also them orchestrating that trilateral understanding in other forums like expanded forum of BRICS. So Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa also have Russia, China, India in that. And it has seen their kind of coordination becoming visible in that. And one could go and talk about other similar forums where these three countries sit together. But that is not to say that they do not have disjunctions, contestations, confrontations. We have seen last 2 years of confrontation on the border between China and India. Russia and China, as you narrated, some of them also have their own set of concerns about each other. The Chinese, almost becoming a kind of an issue. The overseas Chinese becoming an issue in the east of Russia, for example, Siberia. Or likewise, the new China now calls itself the new Arctic state, and Russia obviously is not something sees this as something to celebrate. So in fact, Russia, India would also have some issues of disjunctions between them. For example, line of credit that was announced way back in 2019 is still to come on the ground. I mean, Prime Minister had made that statement in Vladivostok of $1 billion of line of credit, but it's still to see implementation. So what I'm underlining is that nations, particularly big powers or emerging powers, do not see each other in emotional terms. They do hardcore cost-benefit analysis as to how they can maximize benefits with each other. So definitely, 4 years of President Trump, the personalized confrontationist policy, trade war technology was with China, saw China and Russia cozying up to each other. And you saw Vladimir Putin repeatedly being present on Belt and Road Forum in Beijing, and even otherwise showcasing that bonhomie between the two leaders. The two summit meetings of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Xi Jinping 2018-19 also showcased a similar bonhomie. So in that sense, it's a kind of a complex picture of enormous amount of coordination, if not cooperation, but also elements of contestations, if not confrontation between these three states. Now, let me put something which will be easier for your audience to understand. China has had enormous amount of investments in Russia. For example, they had about 5-6 years ago signed a single agreement for import of Russian energy costing $300 billion for the next 25 years. Biggest deal. India's biggest investment so far in that oil and gas sector in Far Eastern area is about $15 billion. India's trade with Russia is about $8.1 billion. China and Russia trade is about $45 billion. So economic engagement and investments that China has done in Russia or Russia has done in India and in China show that I think there is a stronger bonding that is happening in case of China and Russia. And India's bonding is time-tested, historic, but it could be described as relatively shrinking because not only Russia has become closer to China over years, but also closer to its closest ally, Pakistan. So Ambassador would know very clearly how joint exercises have happened, defense cooperation is being conceptualized. So both India's immediate neighbors, which we see as adversaries, have seen a certain proximity increasing with Russia. And so these are multiple pulls and pushes that are happening in that trilateral relationship. But let me finally underline the fact that when it comes to United States and its friends and allies, it still looks at this triangle of Russia, India, China as something to reckon with, because three of them have repeatedly come up with views on various issues. Issues like, slapping sanctions on Iran or slapping sanctions on North Korea. These three have definitely stood up in sort of joint position vis-a-vis these issues, which have not been in tandem with Western positions, which have been at variance with Western positions. India, of course, is one of the three of these, Russia, China, India, which has lately, shall we say, drifted gradually closer to United States and its friends and allies, which could be seen partly triggered by the tensions with China to some extent. So that kind of redefining of equations may be seen something that will concern Russia particularly, but also to some extent concern China. And that is why you see that last year, it is Russia that was trying to help facilitate, if not mediate, in bringing both the defense ministers of China and India to Moscow, and then foreign ministers of India and China, to make sure that the triangle doesn't get derailed. Because, and that's my last point, Russia's global stature is enormously undergirded by its relationship with China and India. Minus China and India being its close partners and friends, Russia's global stature really gets undermined. So Russia sees this as in its own interest to make sure that it is able to constantly stay, in good relationship with both China and India. And therefore, you have noticed that in times of tensions, Russia is very careful as to what kind of language it uses in not appearing to be taking sides between China and India, but still making sure that it is able to facilitate a certain amount of dialogue between China and India. So in that sense, the triangular relationship of Russia, China, India is a kind of a frame that is significant in determining the trends of global politics, is something that Western nations, particularly United States, stays very aware of, but it has its own limitations. And I think if you want to notice just last 10 years or so, yes, the comparative strength of Russia, India, China strategic triangle can be seen as diminishing over a period of time. And India's relationship with the United States, and of course, United States friendship comes with a package deal of all the friends and allies of United States, has become kind of a buzzword of security narratives as to how security architectures are being reorganized. So in that sense, yes, this triangular relationship is significant, but is also witnessing certain amount of tensions and diminishing influence in global affairs.
So basically, all the partnerships and alliances and positionings. So very well put, sir. So talking about the big tables, the key takeaways from the summit, including the big ticket defense agreements whilst retaining 60% of India's defense imports from Russia. The production of AK-203s rifles, and then the 10-year military cooperation with annual exercises in both countries are, clearly the indicators that President Putin is going steady on the strengthening the bilateral relations. And PM Modi and President Putin have met 19 times since 2014 and have a great relation and transparency. Professor Sir, what must have Putin said to Modi in all transparency behind the closed doors regarding his view on India's recent US partnerships?
I think definitely in face-to-face closed-door meetings, several clarification must have been sought and given, I understand. Because there are several irritants that have gradually come up in the bilateral relationship. Some of them were also visible in the meetings of foreign ministers and defense ministers. For example, Sergei Lavrov did make mention about their concerns about what is happening in Indo-Pacific, about the quadrilateral security framework. Indian defense minister, with the meeting with Russian defense minister, made mention of tensions with this increasing militarization in the neighborhood, alluding to China in that sense. So I'm sure that there was a certain bonhomie and camaraderie being reassured. And that is what happens when great leaders meet. I mean, nitty-gritties of 28 agreements being signed is not significant for me, because as Ambassador would vouch me, those drafts must have been cleared maybe weeks before they were signed. What happens in important meetings like this is to create that understanding and trust, share notes, and give direction to where they want to take the relationship. And therefore, that is, I think, what must have happened. And the fact that he came to India, despite the fact that from 2019, President Putin has not traveled out of Russia. The only time he traveled was to Geneva, as you mentioned, halfway to meet President Joe Biden. He was not having the summit meeting in the United States. So this makes it a first summit meeting where he's all the way traveling to the host country. And that has symbolisms for both our domestic constituencies, but also to the rest of the world, to notice that these two countries are going strong, and therefore irritations that may have come into the media lately are not impacting their mutual bonhomie and partnership. And in that sense, I think two leaders themselves could take each other in confidence and have a frank discussion on things that they think are significant for them, and they need to know where the other partner is moving, whether that partner is moving together or at variance, and if other partner is moving at variance, how to deal with that issue. So I think in that sense, physical meeting underlined the significance, I would say, particularly that the President Putin sort of wants to bring to this meeting, but also for the host country. It's an important meeting that face-to-face conversations took place. I'm sure very, very intense preparations were made for these conversations. So both symbolisms and also giving strategic direction to the bilateral relationship is what I think is the big takeaway, other than the 28 agreements that we have read in the media were signed. That, of course, some of these were, of course, also not signed. Logistics exchange agreement, for example, could not be signed. And the explanation was that the Russian naval chief wasn't here to sign it, and that it will be signed soon. So some of the other areas could also not be covered, of course, at this stage, which also shows that it's not completely, milk and honey kind of a situation between the two countries. And there are hiccups, and some T's need to be, cut, and I's need to be dotted. So it's a kind of a interesting layout of, I think, largely positive outcome of bilateral relationship, very strong signal to the rest of the world, but also standing by what they think is important for their national interest, as Ambassador said, and not really giving up to just make sure that every agreement they thought should be on the table to be signed. And some of these are still pending for consideration. So it's a mature relationship in that sense of both countries, which is a good sign for a stronger partnership between Russia and India.
Russia has been a time-tested friend, forever. So, Professor Singh and Ambassador Triggernath, sir, Thank you for your time and views and bringing such a value to this discussion session. Thank you so much.